Hi, my name is Matthias. I'm here to give my presentation on knowing how to make connections with your audience as a musician. Before I proceed, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule to listen to me today. I hope you enjoy and learn something today. Before I begin, let me just share something fun with you. Now, imagine you're traveling overseas in another country, in a foreign culture, with foreigners all around you, and you cannot find somebody that you know at all. How would you feel? Would you feel afraid? Would you feel lonely? You may be enjoying your time as a tourist in another country, but do you feel like you are unable to connect with somebody else? Now, let's say in that country you met another Singaporean who happens to meet you as well, right? And you guys became friends. How would you feel then? You feel a lot better, right? But it's not just feeling better, you feel connected. You feel that you had somebody that could relate to you. You feel that there is somebody who is like you, who can resonate with you, with your interests, with your culture, your background. And that is something that I want to focus more on in this presentation, which is the whole idea of being relatable. So, with that in mind, let's move on. So today, my main idea for this presentation is very simple but also very profound. To me, music is more than just sounding nice. An engaging, meaningful experience of music is not merely found in the notes that you play, but it is in the relatability of the music to the audience. Alright, in other words, the music has to be relatable to the audience. This doesn't mean that you sell yourself out to the audience. It doesn't mean that your music does not have value on its own, but it means that the music has to meaningfully resonate with the audience. Let's unpack this idea together. Firstly, let me introduce my first supporting idea. In order for your audience to relate to your music, it must contain something familiar for them to relate to. Hence, the music should be relatable to the audience by aesthetically reframing ideas that are recognizable and relevant to the audience. Now, this supporting idea is derived from a portion of our readings that we had in class, which is Romantic Music by Arnold Whittle, and he said that by endowing the commonplace with lofty significance, the ordinary with mysterious aspect, and the familiar with the merit of the unfamiliar, this is practicing romanticism. Now, even though today's presentation is not about romanticism, but I would like to take this idea to use it as a tool to help you understand how to help your music relate to other people, how to add relatability to your music. And the way you do it is by adding something that is relatable to the audience, adding an aspect or an element that the audience will be able to resonate with. Now let's move on to our supporting details. In this case study, we will be studying a piece called Symphonic Suite on a set of local tunes by our local composer Kelly Tang. Now let's listen to a short excerpt from this piece. Now, clearly, Singaporeans are going to enjoy this piece in a much more meaningful way than non-Singaporeans because of the presence of national tunes like Home and Chan Mali Chan. Now, more than just identifying them in the music, we as Singaporeans recognize their personal and cultural significance because we grew up listening to them, and therefore they have some significance to our identity as Singaporeans. Therefore, we as Singaporeans relate to the music at a personal and cultural level, and hence the music is meaningfully engaging to us. Now, similarly, in the Romantic period, Tabor, one of the six tone poems in Sumatana's Mavlas, includes a historical Czech hymn called Ye Warriors of God, which was culturally recognized by the Czechs. And it was taught in churches, in schools, all down through Czech history, and therefore it is so embedded as part of the Czech culture, it became synonymous with an artifact of Czech national pride. The Czechs were able to relate to the music at the personal and cultural level as well. Therefore, this explains the celebration of Smetana's Mavlas as a very prominent nationalistic piece of music by the Czech people. Now, let me link all this back to my main idea, right? Firstly, the tunes are personally and culturally relevant to the local audience, whether is it Kelly Tang or Smetana. Next, these tunes are meaningfully recognized and appreciated by the audience, therefore making the music personally and culturally significant. And as the music is now personally and culturally significant, it connects with the audience not just as listeners but to their identity, in this case, Singaporeans or Czechs. And connecting to the identity of the audience, the music is now appreciated at an empathetic level, which shows that the relatability is crucial to make the music meaningful and engaging. Right. And therefore this shows the idea of relatability is so important in order for musicians to connect with their audience at a deeper level. Now let's move on. Moving on to the next supporting idea, the performance context that is relevant to the current social narrative will accentuate the relatability with the audience. Now, performers performance contexts include the identities of the performers, the conductor, the musicians, and the general theme behind the performance. Now, referencing to some of the reading materials that we had, music is a direct and close reflection of conflicts, confusions, wider historic scenes, war, social, political upheavals, etc. And these are all the social narrative of the time. Basically, what the reading is stating is that the art of music becomes a medium of ideological and cultural expression of the current social narratives. Now, let's bring all these ideas back to our study on Kelly Tang's Symphonic Suite. Firstly, Symphonic Suite was conducted by a Singaporean conductor, Clarence Tan, performed by the SSO, and it was played during the celebration of Singapore's Golden Jubilee, which is in 2015. Yes, which was in 2015. Uh, Therefore, by contextualizing this piece, written by a Singaporean in an event of national celebration in 2015, including a Singaporean conductor directing the SSO, all this reflect the social narrative of the Singaporean pride and joy in celebrating the Golden Jubilee in 2015. Now, likewise, Smetana's Mavlas was performed by a local Czech conductor, Adolf Czech, in the cultural center of Zofin Palace, which in that time it had some political significance. It was in Prague, and it was during the time of the Czech national revival in the 19th century. Now, that was the period of time where the Czechs were trying to establish more and more of their nationalistic pride against the influence of the Austrians, which were having which were having influence on the Czech people. Therefore, the performance context was also an ideological and cultural expression of the spirit of Czech nationalism. Now, this level of relatability explains the huge public success during its premiere to an audience that generally are not technically trained in music, and yet the music is able to relate to them at a very, very meaningful level. Why? Because of the performance context, right? Czech conductor perform in a in a place that is significant to the Czech people, at least politically, as well as it is performed during the time where Czech nationalism was rising. Now, let me link all these ideas back to my main idea once again. The current nationalistic ideas are reflected in the performance context through the involvement of local composers, conductors, and of course, audience. This means that together with the music itself, the performance context becomes a medium of expression of current social events that are relatable to the audience. With the current social events as a frame of narrative, the performance becomes socially impactful and relevant to the audience. That, in other words, the social events that are happening while during the time of the performance, they become the frame of narrative. They help the audience to put themselves in a place where they can perceive and appreciate the music according to some of the social events that are happening. Lastly, this is because the performance reflects the reality that the audience is living in, which allows the audience to associate their lives with the performance. This is essentially relatability. This is essentially being relatable, at least as a musician. Now, in conclusion, let me repeat my main idea again. An engaging, meaningful experience of music to the audience is not merely found in the notes, but in its relatability to the audience. Here are three keys in my presentation that may benefit your life as a whole, as a musician and as a human being, right? The first being the power of a shared identity or shared experience. I feel that when there is a shared identity, whether is it a Singaporean or shared experience, maybe you and another person went through the same experience together, these things will help you to relate to the other person and vice versa. Right? This is because you are now being able to connect at a much deeper level, right? I am very sure that the audience will always remember performers and musicians that they can relate to. Now, the next being the power of connections, meaningful connections, right? Meaningful connections make your world big because more people can relate to you, and when there are more people that can relate to you, you realize that your life is more than just what you do, right? Your life is more than the music, the notes that you play. All right, it's about the people that you play to as well. Lastly, I want to talk about the power of a frame narrative. All right, you can see the same painting 1,000 different ways if you have 1,000 different narratives, and musicians do that through their performance context. This is what I believe. Because performance context will frame the way your music will be received by your audience. So you will want to do that to your advantage as well. So moving on from here, these are just some questions, some concluding questions that you can ask yourself to take this presentation further into your personal lives as a musician, as a student, as a friend, as a human being. Right. Firstly, how do I embody my personal narrative in the performance context of my recital? What are the things that you want to communicate to your audience? What are the things that you want your friends, your audience to remember about your performance? All right. What about the music that you want them to remember? Right. Next, the next question is, does this mean that the relationship with my audience becomes part of my music? Now, this is a very interesting question, and I hope that you will take this question further. Uh, Maybe it will shape the way you see yourself as a performer. It will shape the way you see yourself as a musician. All right. Maybe it will even redefine what music is to you. Music is more than just sounding nice. It's more than the notes you play. An engaging, meaningful experience of music is not merely found in the notes, but in its relatability to the audience. Thank you so much for spending the time, taking time out to listen to me, and I hope that this presentation has benefited you in some way or another. Have a nice day ahead.